Welcome to Tommy Solo's Famous Friends. This is where I get to chat with people who I've connected with over the years in the world of arts and entertainment. And today I'm pleased to have with me from the Zurich rocker band, Hillbilly Moon Explosion,
Quite a
Oliver
mouthful.
Baroni. Welcome to the show, Oliver.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure. So, from what I understand, Hillbilly Moon Explosion has been around now for quite some time, originally formed in 1999. Wow. Oh, man. And you guys have had over 10 albums up to date. Is that right?
Oh, that could very well be actually. Now that you say it, it sounds kind of scary. Was it 10? I haven't counted them recently. I mean, maybe there's one or two which are kind of like sampler albums, kind of like best of albums. So I'm not quite sure if we should count those. But it could be around that. Yeah.
Okay, so
Uh-huh.
long time on the road, and you've toured extensively all over Europe, and I understand that you even were on the west coast of the U.S. in
South
2018 and
Coast, that's right.
2019. One thing I'm curious about, you're a bass player and singer, and you're the principal songwriter in the band. At one point in time, you all opened for Jeff Beck. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes.
So,
Yes.
as a bass player backstage, what did that feel like watching Jeff Beck do his magic?
Uh, well, we got to watch him a couple of times from the side of the stage. I remember that his crew was really cool about everything. They were really nice. He was really nice too. I think the first couple of gigs, I think his band was more or less in and out, but from the third gig onwards, he just I remember he just knocked on our dressing room door, and there he was with a bottle of champagne and some glasses, saying, "Listen, I can't drink this all by myself." And he was lovely. It was great. It was actually a lot of fun watching him backstage noodle around. And at the time, he was exclusively playing rockabilly stuff. He was doing Grady Martin and Cliff Gallup, because I think either he had just come out or he was on his way to doing that rockabilly set thing that would then became a live album.
Okay.
Because backstage, that's kind of all he was doing. It was all he was no, practicing that middle.
It's
So I
funny
was like,
because
that.
I'd forgotten about his rockabilly stage, honestly, and I was wondering, this is kind of a weird mix because you guys are definitely, that rockabilly style and surf punk
He
kind of thing.
specifically, yeah, we got this slot because he specifically asked for a retro 1950s, 60s oriented rock and roll band. He specifically asked for that. And I think on various stages of the European tour, we were on the French leg. He had different bands, and yeah, but when we got on well. I mean, didn't get to know him super well, but we had a bunch of drinks, and it was nice. Obviously, our guitar player at one stage just sort of honed in on him, and then they started talking nerd for about an hour. So yeah.
Yeah. Now, you guys are definitely of that ilk, and it's a long enduring style. I'm curious, what got you into rockabilly initially? I mean, there were so many other things that you could have done back in the 90s.
Um, yeah. Well, as usual, it was a combination of things. Personally, I'm a pianist by trade. I never actually learned the bass. I had piano lessons. I had classical piano and jazz and arrangement and stuff. And then obviously as a teenager, you just sort of look at the bass and think, hey, a piano's got 88 strings and this thing just has four, so how hard can it be? So with the piano, as a small kid, I always enjoyed the boogie woogie the most out of all the things I got to play on the piano. And I very soon wanted to, do my own twist, version of that. Then, becoming, an early teenager, you want to do something that's a bit more obnoxious. And so you go from the natural progression. I mean, it's sort of like a very sort of musicological, natural progression. If you look at it from a ethnomusicological historical point of view, that you go from boogie blues to rock and roll. I mean, that's actually what happened back in the 40s and 50s. And so yeah, you know, I was obviously learned how to play the Chuck Berry and Little Richard songs fairly early on. And as a teenager, I decided, well, no, I want, you know, a band with a obnoxious guitar and, you know, some screaming into a microphone. And that's sort of where the sort of the psychobilly punk rock edge sort of came in, sort of, so it was still in that vibe, but it was a bit more annoying, I suppose.
So it's an organic thing for you. It came naturally.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm interested in the fact that there were two bands that kind of came together. Yourself, you were with the Hillbilly Headhunters, and Emanuella had another band. How did the two of you connect, and how did this thing happen between you?
Her band was called MD Moon. It was a sort of out pop, sort of like singer-songwritery, sort of indie pop kind of thing. And both of our bands individually had a rather good reputation as live bands. And so when we started off this project, which was supposed to be this retro rock and roll project, um, she sort of suggested, listen, let's call it the Hillbilly Moon Explosion, because here we're sort of like getting together and we want it to be a bit, you know, exciting and explosive. And also in the hope that we could sort of like capitalize on the work we put into the other bands with our live following. And it actually worked because I mean, locally, we never played to an empty house. We were able to sort of like inherit our, you know, respective fans. Downside is, as I always say, you're stuck with a slightly too long and slightly silly band name, and now it's been more than 20 years and we can't change the name. It's that really long name that you never are able to read on festival posters because it's, you know, the font gets squished in. You'll see, I
Right.
don't know, you'll see Hives or U2, you know, in huge letters, and then underneath there's the Hillbilly Moon Explosion from Hell or something.
Well, it stands out, you know, from one extreme to the other. Like you say, you too, that's pretty straightforward. But um, I'm
Are you wearing
curious.
a yes t-shirt? We should have got it's a shame Duncan isn't here. You see, our guitar player, he's a massive prog rock fan.
Ah, well,
I usually tease him about it because I always say I'm a bit wary about a style of music that has no female fans. But but
yeah,
I I guess I can see the fascination though. No, he's massively into Yes and King Crimson and all those bands, yeah.
I'm not a
Oh, side
huge,
note.
I'm not hugely, you know, obsessed with the band. Yes, I appreciate them more from a musician's perspective than as a fan, to be honest with you, because, like you say, it's a band that doesn't have any female fans. It was the only concert I ever went to where I figured there was no chance of hooking up with anybody. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. But they are brilliant artists, as we all know. That
Yes.
that said, back to the Hillbilly Moon Explosion. I'm curious.
Who are brilliant artists, by the way.
Yeah, uh, curious. The name Hillbilly. Are you familiar with the history of where that name came from?
Yeah, I mean the whole Appalachia thing and everything, I guess it's that. I mean, it's obviously wildly inaccurate for us because first of all, we're not from North America. And I mean, I'm from London and have lived in Zurich for most of my life. So I've always lived in cities. I guess Emanuela, she's from a small town, and Duncan he's from this tiny place in Shropshire in the west of England, which is I mean, he was already mentioned in the Doomsday Book, so we're talking William the Conqueror. And I think back then it had something like 200 inhabitants, and now it has 200 inhabitants. So he would, I would say, him and Emanuela, they could qualify as hillbillies technically, but of course none of us are North Americans. So
Well, you mentioned William the Conqueror, and that's what I was driving at. Really, is that the religious wars in the 1600s in Scotland, and
oh, of course. Well,
the uh,
that's
the
later, yeah.
Highlanders were called hillboys, right?
Yeah.
And then those who supported William were Billy Boys, and then it kind of became hillbillies, and then it followed them over to America. So I was interested in that part of it. I mean, it is a unique name, absolutely, but there's certainly some history
Hey,
there.
I mean, alas, I didn't delve that far into history when I was a, 16-year-old kid trying to figure out a cool name. I just thought it sounded, I remember at the time I thought it sounded cool and funny in a sort of, psychobilly context, playing on this sort of, backward, redneck theme that of course we weren't. But yeah, we played around with that. I think psychobilly isn't a very serious style of music. And it's also one which I think is very, lends itself very well to your teenage years. It's like all those music, like metal or punk rock. It's one of those, it's really good to vent your teenage frustrations with.
Right. Yeah. So there is a brand new album just released at February 9th, you said. Sometimes Late at Night is the single. The album is Back in Time. Now, I watched the video for Sometimes Late at Night, and it's perfect representation of the style. I mean, you're all wearing vintage clothing, you're playing vintage instruments, and it is the epitome of rockabilly. So I'm curious about
Well,
the
if you, I'm not quite sure, sorry to interrupt. I don't think that's, I mean, are you talking about sometimes late at night or are you talking about?
right. Well, yeah. I mean your overall style, but go on. Yeah.
Yeah, well, because sometimes late at night, that's an Emanuela song and it's got a bit more of that 1970s Go-Go's, Blondie, punk rock vibe to it. And I'm actually not playing my upright bass in that song. I'm actually playing the bass guitar and that. But I'm not I do think the whole style thing, it's a double-edged sword, the labeling as whatever, rockabilly or whatever, because on one hand, I mean, it's definitely a style of music which I love and continue to love and I have great admiration for. And it's a great scene, by the way, out there. It's a great fan scene and music scene. But it does sort of, I mean, sort of pigeonhole you into something that maybe, if you look at it closely, you're not necessarily, and then people might come with wrong expectations. First world problems. I know it's. I don't think we've ever had a problem with that, but yeah. Okay, sorry, I interrupted. Very,
No,
very rude.
that's fine. I'm not always right. Just ask my ex-wife. But anyway, the music is awesome. It's distributed in North America by Casablanca. And I understand you've got all the media formats available.
Yes, we've got it in vinyl. Hey, well, that's how modern we are. We've got it in vinyl.
I had a conversation with Canadian rocker Rick Emmett from the band Triumph recently, and he's not a big fan of vinyl because he says what he doesn't want to hear that shh at the beginning of the album. But there's a real following and appreciation for vinyl out there today. It seems to really be on the rise again.
It's taken off. I think people now view it more like as a sort of a souvenir. It's something that you go to a gig, you buy the vinyl, you buy the t-shirt, and that is basically a way of, sort of enhancing your experience. So you go and see a band that you like, you enjoy yourself, and you want to be reminded of that, hopefully great night that you've had. But every morning you put on the t-shirt, and every time even if you're not actually playing the vinyl record, every time you sort of see it there in your bookshelf or something. So I think that's the way it works. People will of course use streaming services. It's far more practical when you're, I don't know, doing your morning run or in your morning commute in the car, obviously. But vinyl is just a nice thing to have. It's a bit like a trophy. So I'm either way, I'm happy.
Right. Well, for me, it gives you a sense of ownership. You know, you've got something you can put
Yeah.
in your hand, and it for those of us of a certain age, it brings a certain amount of nostalgia, and brings to mind.
Liner notes. Hey, liner notes. I am also of a certain age where I remember, I mean, I probably still can remember individual musicians' names from albums that I bought on my teens because at the time you would just put the album on, and while you're listening to this to the album, of course you're reading the liner notes. And if you're a bit of a nerd like me, you're reading them, really, you're really sort of memorizing them. I didn't, I was really bad. I wasn't very good at memorizing my school homework, but boy, did I know who played on what track of that one sampler. So,
That's right. Yeah, yeah. It was certainly an occupation. That said, you guys are playing live shows now to promote the album. So you're over in Switzerland. Are you traveling any other parts of the world for this, or?
yes, I mean, unfortunately, we don't have that many gigs in Switzerland itself, which is a bit of a shame because it's a small country, meaning, distances aren't long. But I mean, we do actually have a couple lined up, but we have, I think it's this year we've got England is becoming a bit more of a thing again. So we're going to England twice, we've got Germany, we've got France in the cards. We're playing a bunch of festivals. The big one in Spain, near Barcelona. We're doing stuff, and hopefully we should be doing the US again. I think in the summer and or the fall. I think hopefully both. So yeah, we travel quite a bit. It's actually so we actually all live in Switzerland. It's two Englishmen, a Frenchman, and an Italian Swiss girl. But we live in Zurich, which is kind of ideal to tour because you're really right slap bit bang in the middle of the continent, and so it's very convenient to get to, different places.
Right, right. Yeah, so I'm curious, what's it been like for you all to get back to playing live after COVID?
Hey, it was weird, and we did one or two gigs, sort of like we did one or two social distancing gigs, which were bizarre. I remember the first time we did one in Geneva, and they booked us in a club, which is usually about a 400 cap club, and they let in 50 people, and everyone was allotted a seat, and I think they were given a little coffee table for the drink. But they had to remain seated, and all the seats were like 6 feet apart or something. And so you saw people sort of like bopping in their seats and really wanting to get up, but actually, not being able to. And of course, everyone was, wearing masks and stuff. So that was kind of bizarre, but somehow the sheer enjoyment and relief of getting back onto stage. I remember standing on the balcony while watching the support act, and just sort of the fact that there was so much noise coming from the stage it was like, oh wow, this is so good for so good for your soul. It's like there's humans out there just making noise in front of an audience. It's beautiful. So yeah, I would say it was relief. How was that like? It was relief.
Yeah, we were all really hurting for a long time. I know that my first live show after COVID was there were over 1,000 people at this festival, and I
Wow.
was terrified, not because of the number of people, but it was supposed to be a COVID protocol gig, and there was nothing keeping people away from the stage, and I mean, knowing now what I didn't know then, the fact that there were all these people out there, none of them wearing masks, I was just, oh my God. But it at the same time, I was overjoyed because it had been a couple of years with no live music anywhere. So,
Yeah. A
it's
lot of people got creative. I mean, I saw that during lockdown. A lot of you saw some musicians were like, there were these people who then like, okay, every week we're going to do an online show. And um, a good friend of mine, this amazing singer songwriter called Becky Lynn Blanca, she had this thing called the Sad Girls Club. every single day for more than a year, she went online for a full hour and played a full hour on her ukulele and sang. So there was lots of that going on. And then there was the other people, a bit like me, who would just kind of became a bit depressed. And because of that, I didn't feel at all like, like doing some sort of online show or anything. I just sort of moped around grumpily. But then that actually then got us back into rehearsing again, which was good because there was actually Emanuela who kind of got us back onto track because I was kind of, I don't know, suffering from writer's block and just generally a bit depressed and fed up. And she writes differently from me. She writes all the time, whereas I only write under pressure. I only write if I've got, recordings coming up or something. And so she just said, listen, I've got these songs that I've been writing. I think we should just try them out. Even if we don't have a gig scheduled, even if we don't have any recordings scheduled, let's just meet once a week and, like normal bands. Because this is a thing we never really did. We were the least rehearsed band out there. We would only really sort of rehearse very specifically goal oriented, be it for recordings or for tours, and otherwise we wouldn't see each other. And then she decided, oh, let's just do the thing, what other people do, like let's just meet once a week and just try out stuff. So yeah, that kind of got the ball rolling again, and we got into writing songs, and that eventually led to this album here.
Now, earlier I mentioned that in the video for Sometimes Late at Night, you're all playing vintage instruments. Now, you mentioned you're playing an electric bass, not a stand up, but that's not a brand new bass. I was trying to figure out, is that an old Hagstrom 60s
No,
model?
it's a 67 Gretsch. I think it's the 6071. I think it's the 6071, whereas the Peter Tork Monkeys one is the one with the two pickups. That's the 73. Yes, mine is the 71.
Okay.
67. I don't play bass guitar all that often, but what I do is I in recording. So I produce this album, and my approach is always to give every individual song what it needs. And if a song demands a bass guitar, I will use a bass guitar. And if a song demands an upright bass, I'll use an upright bass. And that one sounded like a bass guitar, and so I used a bass guitar on it. Yeah. And in the video, I'm playing that one that I actually didn't use in recording. I used it in recording, but not for that song. Okay.
Well, it's interesting. There are so many really talented and I want to say almost to the point of virtuosic players out there who don't understand the art of playing for the song and don't understand the art of playing in a band. So it strikes me that bands that sound good, as you do, have that ability to know what's right for the song. So yeah, I mean, if I'm recording something, you can see the guitars behind me here.
Yes.
If I'm recording
It has
something,
some amazing inlays, I can see.
that is my custom built Solocaster.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it. Um, oh God, I'm going to grab it.
All right.
Yeah, so
Wow. Oh, those are dragons or something.
yes, that's Korean rosewood fretboard, and that this guitar sprung out of that because I was offered an endorsement deal years ago by
Mhm.
this luthier who saw me playing at a casino, and he got to work on building me a Les Paul, and then he died.
Oh, Paul.
Yeah,
Oh,
and then
okay.
a number of years later, I was at a mutual friend's, and he said, "I've got something for you," and he handed me the fretboard, just the fretboard.
So
Um,
that's Les Paul fretboard.
no, it's actually uh, it was an acoustic fretboard,
Oh.
but my guy here in London carved the neck out of a solid block of maple,
Oh yeah.
And
Sounds
I said I wanted the 60s, 50s, 60s style headstock.
yeah.
And yeah, he put everything together. These are Fender um, white parchment noiseless pickups. We got the body online. It was about $300 for the mahogany body, and I got all the electronics and so on from a friend,
So it's
and
a
we put it
hard
all together. But it
caster.
just started out with a fretboard.
Excellent.
I guess the point before I got into this was that if I'm going to record a song that requires a Stratocaster tone, well, you got to use a Strat. You can't,
Yeah.
you can't play that part on a nylon string guitar, for
I think,
example.
yeah, I mean, I know Duncan, he's got a 63 Strat or something kicking around. But I don't think we used it during recordings. The thing is that, I mean, I think it's sort of, this sounds a bit silly because I'm not a very virtuoso bass player or I mean, let alone guitar player. I can just strum a bit and stuff. But I kind of sometimes think it helps not to be a massive virtuoso on your instrument if your job is to be the musical director of a band like I am, because you that way you don't sort of you can't focus that much on one thing. You always get reminded of what the larger picture is, and you sort of need that to make a song sound good. And therefore, just because you can do something cool on your whatever instrument it is, doesn't mean that that would actually help the song. I mean,
Ex-
typically, I mean, as a band leader, you're forever telling the drummer to play less. You're forever telling the lead guitar player to play less. So,
yeah,
and I'm not telling the bass player to play less because basically I don't know anything virtuoso. I can't really show off that much on my bass. So I would just say, that's where my bass is fairly solid down there, you know.
it's all in the art of playing for the song and writing and producing for the song, right? You want to have something that people can get behind and hum and sing. Like my favorite guitar solo of all time is George Harrison's solo in Something. You
Yep.
know, it's not anything that Steve Howe
That's
did from
beautiful
Yes or
song.
Jeff Beck. I mean, I appreciate those guys as a musician, and I appreciate the talent and the virtuosity, but I want to be able to hum and sing something, and
Yeah.
just get behind it. So we're not all of the same mind as far as that goes. There are probably a few people who still buy jazz records, you know.
But I mean, you need virtuoso musicians. It's just a question of how you work with them. So Duncan, our guitar player, I mean, he's super virtuoso, but what I love doing, and I think he really enjoys that too in the studio, is basically going in, and he usually, yes, there are some songs where he says, okay, I've figured out something that really fits in here. This is what I'm going to do. And we'll say, that's perfect. But there are also some songs where he just says, I don't know, hit me. You tell me, what should we do? And just sort of like playing for the song. And I just know that he's that good that I can just sort of direct him without being a guitar player myself. I can direct him and let him shine, but also let the song as such, be lifted up, be enhanced, not be, not be dominated by a certain instrument, but be enhanced by it.
Absolutely. And I wouldn't consider myself to be the world's flashiest guitarist, for example. And I tend to go into the studio of the same mind. I want to play for the song and keep it simple. Every now and then you need to have a producer to kind of light a fire under you. I've gone in and recorded a song that I didn't plan on having any lead guitar on. And the producer says, you're an amazing guitar player, right? Well, why don't you play like one? Oh,
Oh
okay.
yeah.
You need somebody to direct you and to push you forward sometimes. So it's, I feel like writing a good song and crafting a good album is like building a house. You start with a foundation, right? And then you add everything else on top of that. And it takes an architect to put it all together. And it takes a solid carpenter and the, the craftsmen all work together under the direction of the architect.
I would absolutely agree. I mean, that's probably why I enjoy the production part of an album maybe even more than my actual playing on it, because I just like the idea of being in charge of a sort of soundscape and a sort of more general vision thing. That said, I like having a producer. I like the freedom of, doing a take and then just turning around to the producer and say, was that good? You decide, sir. That's your job now. And just tell me if you would need another take or not. But that's also very nice too, because we did a bunch of albums where we had producers, and then we did a bunch of albums where I produced. So both can be enjoying.
A change is good. Absolutely. Yeah. So the new album is out, Back in Time. It's available wherever you can get your good music from. The single, Sometimes Late at Night, is out there. You can find it on YouTube. What's next for the Hillbilly Moon Explosion?
So we've got so obviously we've got the touring coming up. That's probably going to dominate most of our year. We've already shot 2 more videos. They're in the can, but they have to be edited. So you can expect 2 more videos. And then of course we have ideas. We have 1 or 2 sort of ideas of some collaborations with some friends of ours from other bands that we know. Yeah, so we have ideas of doing some collabs and stuff, but it's probably going to be dominated by quite a bit of touring this year. Yeah,
Good stuff. Well, listen, I don't want to take up your
we
whole.
want to see our audience again, because our audience they're the best. They're so cute. I love it.
Well, it's jump jive, rockabilly, surf rock. It's if you want to see a crowd get going, you're in the right band for it. Absolutely. Yeah. Listen, Oliver, I don't want to take up your whole day. I realize it's evening over there now.
Yeah, it's
So
looking a bit more grim than it actually is. Yeah, it's 20 to 6. Yeah, it's
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, thanks so much for taking the time out of your day to do this with me. And until next time, cheers.
Bye bye.
Tommy Solo's Famous Friends is a one-man production, meaning that I've done all the work, including recording, editing, guest acquisition, etc. And hey, here's some news. We've just recently joined forces with 519 Magazine, so you can check out my interviews there as well. The theme song for Tommy Solo's Famous Friends is a clip from my original composition, The Burn, all rights reserved. If you enjoy the show and you'd like to help us keep it going, why don't you click on the Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes. Hit the like button, subscribe, all that stuff. We really appreciate it. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram. And until next time, cheers.